Well, welcome again to the 15th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. Uh, we have with us this morning uh, Animir Orlana. Just kind of slide over that, and Georgina Argil, almost correct, and they can correct me. Uh, Annie Muir is a professor of instructional technology and distance education at the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice at Nova Southeastern University. And Georgina is an assistant dean for academic and faculty affairs for bilingual programs, and she's an associate professor at the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice at Nova Southeastern University. And our session is how students experience using real-time automated captions, subtitles in live online courses. So let me turn it over to you two and tell us everything we need to know.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. This is really, I was having a conversation with Bob before you guys joined, and I was telling him how interesting and how wonderful these opportunities are that we present. And then these recordings are available for others. So thanks for being here, and thanks for the opportunity. Today I'll share with you, Georgina and I will share about a study that we conducted last year about students' experiences using real-time automated captions and subtitles in live presentations. I know some of you have already are using the captions in Zoom, so it's something that has been out there for a while, especially after the pandemic or during the pandemic, when a bunch of tools came out, right, with automated captions and subtitles. So we wanted to research and study and understand a little bit more how students would experience a presentation, online presentation that used, where students would have access to captions in the spoken language of the presenter or subtitles as a translation. So I'll share with you about the study and the findings. And, the background, the rationale of the study, why we thought it was important. Briefly, the setting and the method or the methodology, the themes that emerged. It was a qualitative study. Share with you some recommendations, some conclusions of the study. And hopefully we have time. We have time for you to experience the subtitles with the tool that we used. Now, I want to say that when we started the study, or when we started getting interested in the subtitles and the captions, Zoom had not made available the captions and the subtitles yet. So we used the tool that we had at hand, which in that case was Microsoft Present Live. And I'll explain why and how that tool is different from what we have currently, at least with video conferencing as Zoom. So generally speaking, the concern followed, in addition to having all these tools readily available, is that we as educators and overall in education, we strive to deliver strategies that address the diversity of our students. And we expect a diversity of students in our classrooms, whether learners with or without disabilities, natives and non-native speakers, right, of the language of instruction, among other variables. So universal design for learning is a framework that can be used, right, to design instruction and curricula to address that diversity. Actually, UDL is built on the premise that the variability is the norm, that we will find that. And through design, we can address those barriers that students may experience based on their learning variabilities. So briefly, UDL follows from universal design, which was a term originally that originated from the architecture, right? It referred to environments, physical environments and products designed to be accessible or usable for anyone without need for accommodations. Examples are, the ramps that we have, the automatic doors, the escalators. So they were meant originally for those with disabilities, but now they're useful for anyone, right? Almost anyone benefits from those. So according to universal design, in a nutshell, what's essential for some is almost always good for everybody or for all. And environments can be disabling, but well-designed environments are not. So UDL brings that notion to learning, right? And it expands the work of accommodations for a few to designing for everyone, so everyone can benefit from the curricula, or a course design, materials, and instruction that can benefit many. So it shifts the focus from special design for a few to design that can benefit many. So that's, in a nutshell, UDL. I'm not going to go more further on that. The framework then presents guidelines, right, that you can implement to design your materials, instruction, or the curriculum to address that diversity. 3 principles, each principle 3 guidelines, and each guidelines has a set of checkpoints to implement, or ideas on how to implement the guideline. We focused on providing multiple means of representation by providing captions to provide alternative or auditory information, and subtitles to promote understanding across languages, right? So there are many, as you can see, 31 checkpoints is quite a handful of ideas on how to implement them. Focusing on a few at this little by little, then you can have your courses readily accessible for the majority or for many. So in a nutshell, UDL that can provide multiple means of representation. The principle of providing multiple means of representation, a ways of doing it, is by providing captions as a text-based alternative to the auditory information, and subtitles as the translation to promote cross-linguistic understanding, right? So we focus on those 2 things. And given that there is I wouldn't say an explosion, but the increase of remote access or the remote work, the need to work remotely, to learn remotely, to meet remotely. So all these tools are bringing the automated captions to the accessible to most of us. Again, and then I skipped my train of thought a little bit. When we talk about real-time captioning and subtitling, when subtitles as in another language, you can have it, a human transcriber can do the process of captioning, or with automatic speech recognition, which is artificial intelligence-based, machine-based. If we think of the online environment and we want to provide captions or subtitles for every live presentation in the classroom, that can be expensive. Even for recorded videos, when we have a human transcriber edit the captions, doing it, whether it's for recorded or for real time, it can be expensive. A tool or means, if you will, to have a less or inexpensive or free captioning is with automated speech recognition technology. And I put mostly inaccurate because it depends on the speech, the accent of the presenter, and I'm sure some of you are captioning my voice. My speech is not 100% intelligible, right? So that creates error. And the automated speech recognition technology is not there yet to be 100% accurate. So at this time, it's not ADA compliant. However, it can be a solution for some cases. And like I said, there's a plethora of tools in tools that have become pervasive, right? That allow or the access for captions and subtitles, video conferencing systems, platforms, and presentation tools. Now on screen, the presentation tools that are mostly used, in our opinion, is PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Google Slides. They both provide captions and subtitles with different functionalities. And in our study, we use Microsoft PowerPoint. So given the use of the tools, given the plethora of the availability of these tools, you would want to use them in the classroom. Most likely it could become pervasive in the online classroom, right? Using them. But to use them properly, it requires an understanding. What are the limitations, the effectiveness of the feature itself, how educators can properly use it and how easily, and how students with and without disabilities experience and learn using this tool in different instructional scenarios. We chose a particular scenario, which was an online class, one-way presentation, and we wanted to understand their experience. We conducted a phenomenological study to understand students' experience using the real-time captions and subtitles in a live online class presentation. The main question was, how do students describe their experience? Sub-questions, what do they describe as challenges, benefits, and how they describe their experience when reading the real-time captions, automated captions and subtitles as a translation. So those were the questions that drove our study. And the scenario was, in a way, it was a simple scenario. Presenters, participants, and researchers, we were all remotely located, and we used Zoom to connect, right? To communicate and to deliver the research sessions and the presentation as well. The presenter was a native English speaker. She used PowerPoint Present Live to generate the captions to deliver the presentation. And the participants chose to either use a browser or their mobile devices to connect to the presentation and read the captions in English or any other subtitle language that they chose. So they were free to choose the language to follow the presentation. And we had 3 groups of participants. Altogether, we had 24 participants. A little bit of background on PowerPoint with captions and subtitles. When we use PowerPoint, our desktop copy or version, if you will, has been allowing captions and subtitles since 2019. For back then, Office 365, currently Microsoft 365. It allows 12 spoken languages. It allowed, maybe perhaps it's changed, but back then it started with 12 spoken languages and subtitles 60 or more languages, right? It's a cloud-based system. It goes to the cloud, your speech, and then it comes back as captions and or subtitles. It's displaying on screen, meaning that it's an open caption where the presenter chooses to display on screen the captions in their language or the translation as a subtitle, right? The user doesn't get to decide whether he or she or whether they can view the captions or not. You can't turn them on and off as a viewer. Microsoft PowerPoint then added a Present Live feature back in 2020 for PowerPoint Online. It has to be online. The PowerPoint Online, your computer wouldn't have that. It would be on the cloud. As of 2020, with this feature, then the audience can follow the presentation with their devices. They can use a phone or another browser or a browser if they choose. The person can read the the subtitles in the language of their choice, and the audience can be on site or online. So I could be, as a presenter, I can be on site. I can have people in front of me. They can follow the presentation with their phone and hear me live. Or as we did, where the presenter was remote, everybody was remotely located, and you had to have another system to transmit your voice, and that was Zoom, right? So in the audience, the viewers would follow the transcripts on their phone or another browser. I say another browser because they had one browser with Zoom and another browser with the captions if they chose. The majority use the phone. Here's a view of what they would see. If they chose the phone to follow the presentation and the captions, they would have the presentation slides on the top of the screen of the phone. They would have the transcript screen scrolling the text as the presenter speaks. And they would have their choice to select the language on any of the 60 or whatever languages they would provide, right? So they could toggle in this example, testing 1, 2, 3, here, if you choose in Spanish, it would say pruebas 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it would translate to what any other language they could read or you choose, right? I say they could read because if I choose Telugu, I wouldn't know if that was accurate. So you would most likely just select the ones that you can read. If they chose, this is the participants, if they chose another browser, they would have Zoom in one where they would hear the presenter, and the other browser, they could see the transcripts as they scrolled in the same view. This window could be anywhere depending on the size of the browser. So that's more or less what the participants were seeing as they followed the presentation. So what we did is that we had, upon consent, right? We asked the participants demographics, your age and your experience or your skill level with the basic tools that they would use for the session. Can you read a QR code? Can you open a browser? They were basic skills. After our presenter delivered the session, then we had a focus group and a short questionnaire asking the participants, did you use a browser? Did you use your phone? How easy was it for you to follow? What language did you follow? And those type of, it was a short 5-minute questionnaire, so they wouldn't forget. And then we had a focus group. We had 3 focus group sessions, 45 minutes, asking the participants to describe their experience. Basically, our participants, they were students in a non-for-profit private university. They were native and non-native English speakers. They were fluent in English. They were in the U.S. or territory. Some of them were in Puerto Rico and other places. No hearing disabilities, and they already had experience with the regular PowerPoint and Zoom. We invited, so they came to us. Our inclusion criteria was that they spoke English, they were in the U.S., and that they had experience with PowerPoint and Zoom. We did not require this, whether they had or not. It's just that they presented themselves as having no hearing disabilities. So we did data analysis is basic. We had this short descriptives or the demographics and the use of the tools, and an IPA or interpretive phenomenological analysis to code the focus groups transcripts. Right? We use Zoom and the transcripts generated. We read, we verified the whole process, and then we analyze. Right. The way we analyze is how interpretive or IPA typically is conducted to understand and give meaning of the participants' collective experience. So all the 3 sessions were a collective experience. A first level coding, a second level coding that we went through. We met several times to make sure that we understood. The 3 of us were understanding, giving meaning of what we understood and the patterns. And throughout the process, tables were created to organize the data with questions, and it was an interesting approach. This is the most time consuming, of course, as a qualitative analysis. And we thought it was important to bring the ethical considerations to maximize the research setting, right, and the experience. We want to make sure we accommodated students' schedules. These were working students, some were online, other undergraduate, graduate. So we offer alternative research session days to minimize technological issues. We ensure that the participants had experience with using Zoom, had an internet connection and basic technological skills. To minimize distractions, we selected a presentation content appealing to all participants. These participants were from different programs, so we didn't choose a topic that was specialized. We chose a topic that would be generic and hopefully appeal to anyone. To maximize the captioning accuracy, the presenter was a native English speaker. She rehearsed, she had the proper equipment and spoke naturally, avoiding special terms and phrases. Now, this was important to us because it could have taken away from the experience. I am a non-native English speaker, and my intelligibility would have probably caused that the captions would have been less than the accurate expected. Although we're not controlling for it because it was a qualitative study, we did want to minimize those the caption inaccuracies. And to minimize participants' difficulty with using captions and subtitles, we showed them a 3-minute video tutorial to show them how to connect and all that. It went well. I mean, it wasn't that terribly difficult, but we had to show that just in case. Demographics, all in all, we had 24 participants, 22 female and 2 male participants. The average age, they were from 20 to 69 years old, and the median was 29. I mean, most of them were in their 20s. 8 could read a second language fluently. 1 indicated that they could read another language, so 9 could read 2 or more. When we did the IPA, 10 themes emerged, right, when they described their experiences, and we grouped those 10 themes in 3 broad categories: challenges, benefits, and interactions with subtitles. The challenges, then, there were the 10 themes. 3 of them were connectivity, the application features, and inaccurate translation due to dialect variations. Connectivity, they discussed issues, but then they also told each other, they were using the chat session, they were telling each other, if this happens to you, you want to refresh. So even though it was an issue of connectivity, when Microsoft PowerPoint would tell them, it kind of freezes, right, Georgina? It froze, but it would say refresh. Some of them didn't know what refresh meant, and then others would just type in the chat session, just refresh. Refresh means like, oh, and they would fix it themselves. So there weren't many challenges with the connectivity. But the only one that came was when Microsoft told them that something had happened to the connection. Application features, they discussed features that they think would be beneficial, but then they said, oh, it'd be nice to have, if you could follow the script, if you come late or if you could go back. But then some appear to be unaware that feature was already there. So they thought it was a challenge, but at the same time, it wasn't, because others would tell them you can just go back and scroll and look at it. Something that did come to those, specifically, I think the Spanish speakers, they reported that the dialect of their language was not available. Dialect as in, I'm from X countries that speak Spanish, but the PowerPoint, the translation, that's not how we say it in my country, for example. Now, we thought that was interesting, given that would be a challenge for the tool, for any tool to, to come up with all the dialects in the world for our language. But nevertheless, they thought that could be a problem. Troubleshooting technology, they identified and shared methods to troubleshoot, like I said earlier, but few reported not knowing what to do. So even though it was a challenge that they thought, at the same time, they were able to troubleshoot them. So it wasn't that difficult. Split attention is, we thought it was something along the lines of split attention that can in some ways cause cognitive overload. We did not look into the cognitive overload, but they described experiencing what we thought was a split attention effect. When you have to listen to the presenter in a different language, read the captions or the subtitles, and read the text, the visuals, and the PowerPoint all at the same time. Because we were not really looking to test or to explore or to understand or to measure their cognitive overload or their learning per se. We weren't sure about this, but to us, this is something worthy to study further. Like, for example, right now we have a screen with our faces, we have a PowerPoint, and some of you are actually reading the captions. Imagine that in another language, adding the subtitles and reading the PowerPoint and hearing me and seeing my face on screen as well, or your faces. So that could be cognitive overload, worthy of further research, in our opinion. And it's something that we have as a recommendation as well. As benefits, I mean, they were very excited, right, Georgina? They were very excited to talk about the positive side of having captions. We weren't sure that their positive reaction was because some of them were not online students, and they had been experiencing Zoom, and because of post-COVID, this was during post-COVID or more or less, and they
Around the
had
transition period.
yeah, it was a transition period. So some of them had not been online students and they had been exposed and they thought this was great. Others, well, we couldn't tell who was saying what, but we felt that their excitement was probably because it was the thing, right? So they said this was great to give access to live instruction for various types of learners, how remote audiences could have access to the expert, to our thoughts as educators. They really thought of what people in Africa, people anywhere can have access. We don't have to speak the language. We can speak English and they can have a translation. And that was a great thing. They could apply the features as students, teachers, practitioners to research a broader audience, to reinforce learning. They believe that captions could help different types of learners and reinforce for those learning another language as well. They thought that the captions were useful and accurate, convenient, and the tool was easy to use. We were pleasantly surprised that they thought the captions were accurate. I mean, I was following them and they were not that, in my opinion, they were getting better. But when we tested PowerPoint the first time, it wasn't that great. It's gotten better. It could have been because the presenter rehearsed, and she made sure that her intelligibility was high, or her speech was intelligible. But she spoke in her natural pace, which was pretty fast, and they thought it was pretty accurate. So maybe it's an improvement of the technology through the years, but they thought it was accurate, or the inaccuracies didn't prevent them from understanding. We also thought it was because they could understand English. So anything that the inaccuracy of the caption, they could close the gap with what they were hearing. It would be a different experience for those who would not be able to hear the presenter or spoke or didn't speak or understand the language that was being spoken. And that's further research as well. With their interaction with subtitles, they changed. We asked them, how did you select the language? And they said they just, I could read that language, or I was just curious. So they toggled back and forth with the tool, trying to figure out what was how it read in a different language, even though they couldn't read it. But the majority, they used the language that they could read. But then they said it could be distracting. Many reported that they were distracted when reading the subtitles, and others found it too fast. We speculate that those who found it interesting or exciting, what they said, some of them said that they were used at reading subtitles. They grew up reading subtitles. Others, those who never read the subtitles or don't watch movies with subtitles, found it difficult to probably read. It wasn't a theme because it didn't come out as a theme, but some of them did say that. So overall, participants described a positive experience. They were excited. They perceived them as accurate. They didn't report having significant technological issues that they couldn't resolve, that on their own or with the help of a chat of a student. The main challenges was the tool's inability to recognize different dialects and having experienced an apparent split attention effect. And the benefits of the possibilities of using captions, subtitles to allow live instruction access to a broad audience and learning reinforcement to various types of learners. And as any study, there are limitations. We were interested in the experience and not on their learning per se, right? We didn't describe the experience of learners with disabilities. Our learners did not have hearing disabilities or visual disabilities that they reported, right? We didn't ask for that, so we didn't really know. We conducted a one-way lecture, instructional and scenario, like right now. presenter to participants, there wasn't captioning coming from the participants to the presenter. And the presenter was asked to not help participants troubleshoot. In a classroom, something happens and they would raise their hand. Can't connect, help me. They were just left alone to troubleshoot and experience it for themselves. So we thought that, in as much as it was an interesting experience, of course it was limited. And future research, we think it's important to determine the effective use of, in general, accessible presentations for learning in an inclusive classroom, not just with captions and subtitles for the hard of hearing or for the auditory captions as an alternative to auditory information. But what about the layout of the presentation, the colors? We think that when you design a presentation like this, like I have on screen right now with a lot of text, you also have to read the captions and subtitles. That takes away from the proper access to the information and the understanding of what you're saying. So it needs further research and how to best design those presentations. Designing inclusive multilingual live online scenarios where the participants interact, not just a one-way, right? But they interact and speak maybe in their native language. They select the preferred language to hear and read and use the minimum necessary tools. In our study, we had Zoom to connect, and another device was needed or another browser was needed for the subtitles. That probably takes away from focusing on something, and maybe one single tool that would have it all. We would depend on the technology. But there are tools. I think Microsoft Teams allows the subtitling, or it should soon bring it. Zoom has subtitles in other languages, but not like you can choose your own. The presenter has to select what you're going to use. So it would be, whenever those tools are readily available, can we have that multilingual conversation, right? I speak my language, you speak yours, and we communicate in a classroom or informal scenarios. Like I said at the bottom one, in different settings, with students with and without disabilities, with different learning preferences, multilingual or communication barriers, in structured and unstructured, non-rehearsed learning settings. Our case, it was rehearsed. She practiced her presentation. What happens when you're maybe in a virtual office hours to communicate with your students? It's non-rehearsed and it's informal, or hybrid or online learning settings with all those combined. So the tools are there. Educators are going to use it. Let's try and find out how to best integrate them for learning in particular. So our findings contribute to how students without hearing disabilities experience the captions. And again, continuous advancements in the field of automatic speech recognition and artificial intelligence. They warrant further research to better understand the use and integration of those tools. Automated captions can be cost-effective, allowing equal opportunities. They're not accurate, but they might get there at some point. How can we best use it, even though they're not 100% accurate? And we think that the best use as of now is when the audience can hear the presenter and understand the presenter's language. Because they're inaccurate, but not 100% accurate, let's put it that way, you would need to hear to close the gap and say, what did she say? If you just read the captions, it probably would lead to misunderstandings. But it's only a matter of time until these tools get better and better, and that wouldn't be a problem, right? So I don't know, Georgina, if you want to add something. How much time do we have, Bob? Maybe we'd like the audience to try the tool themselves.
Yeah, I think so.
So everybody, if you would like to, I can show you. I think we have like 20 minutes in my clock here. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So let's see if what I'm going to do right now. If there are no questions, no comments, I will share I will practice. What you will see, this is a mock. I will show a screen with this QR code. You can use your phone to scan the code and you'll connect to the presentation. So I'm going to stop this sharing. I'm going to go to PowerPoint online to do the other one. Let's see. I don't see questions on screen.
I was
So-
gonna comment.
Sure.
Well, as someone who is hearing impaired, captioning has been important. In fact, essential for me for many years. And this is at least the second year of the conference that I've used Zoom's built-in captioning. But the very first conference, we had captioning provided by real live people.
Mhm.
And that was an essential part of what we wanted to do when we started the conference, emphasize the importance of accessibility. The challenge still is when you have a discussion in a class, back and forth, many people, that's still a difficult thing. It's also a challenge with traditional video conferencing, like a video conferencing room. There's no captioning built into
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
So, when I was in Pennsylvania with the state system of higher ed, our schools had a huge investment in video conferencing rooms. And I kept emphasizing to folks, someday you're going to have somebody like me taking that class that's going to require captioning. You need to already have in place a plan to deal with it. You can't say, well, you can't take the class.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unless you request for accommodations.
Correct.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
need to have some options that you know of already available for that student or students. So I'm fortunate. A lot of things help me now with, Google with the Chrome
The
browser
Chrome
having it built in,
extension.
with
Yeah, the
Zoom
extension.
having it built in. I used Caption Call for many years in my office for captioning phone calls. But if this were
Technologies are
25
getting,
years ago, I'd be
Yeah.
dead.
and yeah, it's getting better and better. And we thought that now they're here. Now we're going to use them for everyone that would benefit. Maybe the inaccuracies, and I really enjoy your. I mean, I'm so appreciative that you bring this, because if you're hard of hearing or deaf, does it help? Does it? We didn't have that population, and we would like to do more on research and how to, in that attempt of providing the accessibility, not accessibility, but the addressing the diversity, whether you're hard of hearing or you're a speaker of a different language of instruction, or you have, you need to read to close the gap, whatever it is, make it accessible. And this is just the captioning, how do we make it accessible for the others? Is that it really possible, like you said, without really having to get the accommodations, but just offering it? And automated captions has been, wonderful, in my opinion. And it's getting better. You may be, Bob, yourself a witness to that, how they have improved in the last year. I was surprised myself when I started using PowerPoint Live when it came out. It was like, this is terrible. There's not even
I
captioning.
had a lot of errors.
Yeah, the artificial intelligence engine behind it is learning more and more. And the more you practice, it knows your accent, your speech, and you tell it's gonna get better to a point where it might not be 100% accurate, but it does help a lot. And I
One
appreciate that you
challenge is
bring it.
jargon.
The jargon, yeah.
When you've got a
Yes.
particular specialty in the jargon, that could make a real difference to
Mhm.
someone reading the captions.
So as an instructor or as a presenter who's conscientious, who really wants to have this accessible presentation to your content live, because you can edit the captions and make it right. I'm talking, the live is the challenge. You have to rehearse. And that's another topic that we have, is that there are good practices. Avoid the jargon, put it on screen. We did another study where they were speaking in Spanish and they were reading words in English.
Yeah, and that didn't work too
It
well.
went crazy, yeah. Because they were bilingual, our other participants in another study, and they would say, instead of saying COVID-19, which is COVID-19 in Spanish, they would say COVID-19, but they were speaking Spanish. So, okay, wait, you're saying this in English, but I'm supposed to be learning Spanish.
Yeah.
It goes crazy. So you have to practice as a presenter, be conscientious, cognizant that if you're using the tool, like I'm not being right now very much cognizant of it. But if you're using a tool, you have to rehearse, make sure that those terms, that you're not going to speak them so it won't caption you properly. That if you have those proper names, jargon, like you said, Bob, you put it on screen.
Mhm.
You don't read it necessarily. You point the audience to the screen so the tool doesn't go that crazy until it gets, that good, which I don't think would happen. Maybe, I don't know. Artificial intelligence is out of control. So let's, we have 15 minutes. If there's no more comments, I'm good. If you'd like to practice, let's do a PowerPoint present live session. I am going to present live and then I'll show you the screen. Okay, let me go. All right, let me share screen. Share. Can you see on screen something that says, there's a little guy showing the screen? Yeah? Let me see. I'm going to connect myself. So you can point your camera and read the QR code. And it'll take you to a link, which is the present live. And it will connect to the presentation. Georgina, were you able to connect? Okay.
I'm connecting now.
All right. So you see on screen, there's 4 people who have joined.
There it is.
If you can read that, you'll read the transcripts on screen. And notice that it has been captioning me all until just as soon as I opened the presentation. And you can scroll up and down from the presentation slides. Right here, I have the captions on screen and also on the phone, but I can always get rid of them. And you can still follow the subtitles on your phone without seeing the captions. Now, if you want to translate, any of you who speak another language, you can scroll and find another language. I think the good way to try this is if I speak Spanish and you guys try to understand what I'm saying by reading the caption, the subtitles, all right? So I could do that by changing my subtitling, my presenter, the language of the presenter, and you can choose whatever language, if that's something you're interested in. But for the most part, this is how a presentation would go. If I speak Spanish, I change the subtitling, captioning, my language, and you can read if you can understand what I'm saying. So I don't know if you want to try that, let me know. So that's how a person would do. You notice that on the top of your phone, you have the presentation as I advance, okay? You can pinch out and make it larger. And you can also copy and paste your transcripts from your phone and send it to yourself if you want to keep the transcripts. So what students were doing, participants were doing, they were scrolling up and down. And we wonder if that was something detrimental if it were a real presentation where they had to learn, or would they go back, and even if they were playing around, they could read the transcripts and later on catch on. to what they missed. That's further study. We didn't go, we would like to do that for further research, but at this point, we were only interested in the presentation. So we thought perhaps they were not even looking at the screen in Zoom. They were just focusing on their phone, and that would be enough. Other questions arise, like, is the text too small? Is the slide design enough for them to read? What's there, but then with your phones, you can enlarge it. Do you lose the concentration, the focus? We're not sure. You see how that does, and these tools are wonderful because they correct themselves, when it doesn't make sense. And that's an artificial intelligence thing. They hear, they translate and say, oops, that's not what she meant. And then it deletes and it goes back. It's weird. Oh, I see that we have somebody here, they're using it for French right now. With me, or you using it in your class, Manon?
I've used it for live captioning in English, in French.
Beautiful.
In my French class before, but I've never been in a situation where it was used for actual subtitling. For actual translating, and it's pretty accurate.
It's pretty accurate. It's decent. I think it helps us close the gap. It helps us address that diversity that we would want. That communication barrier shouldn't be there anymore. And Microsoft has come up with tools that the Microsoft Translator. They stopped the desktop copy. They're going to enhance it, which is one where you can be at your desk. You can speak your language, like I was saying. You can speak your language. The other person reads it in whatever language they want to read it. It's going to get to a point where language is not a barrier anymore. Now, as a university, of course, you would want your students to at least be fluent in written English, right? It's at least they could read, but sometimes they want to close that gap. We would argue that if it's so important for you to have the captions, that you would then record your live session and then edit the captions in the recorded video. But as a professor myself, I would argue that I don't want to edit an hour of session, but it is what it is. So this is a tool. I hope I don't know, any comments? I can stop, or I could go to my speak Spanish and have you guys read English and see if you can understand that.
I have it in Spanish and it's pretty accurate,
You're reading the Spanish? I'm gonna, I feel like trying out the Spanish. I'm gonna speak Spanish and have you read, see if it, I don't know, if it translates my Spanish. So you go back and I change my settings to, I won't do it until I resume. I have to end the session here. Sorry about that. I'd have to change the titles to, sorry, to my language, but it's not doing it. It's not. All right. It didn't allow me. It happens. It's a cloud system, so it's not letting me change the language. I mean, you should be wanting to change languages as you speak. So that's a tool, but it allows you, like, I could speak another whatever language, and the audience can select whatever language they want to caption or subtitle. So that's the, in a nutshell, a challenge with doing research with tools is that they change over time, right? So we wanted to focus on the experience and not on the tool itself. But we thought that the tool is inherently, the experience depends on the tool, right? It depends on how easy it is. So it's a combination of usability, experience, and that if it warrants further research. And for us, the phenomenon of interest is, can students, would there be cognitive overload? Can you really learn as you watch the subtitles and not be distracted by the inaccuracies, the usability of the tool, and so forth in this particular feature.
Yeah, you're right that captioning and other accessibility tools can benefit everyone. You know, particularly the captioning. If you can, save that text, it's great. I mean, it makes a huge difference, and it's amazing the progress made in just the past 2-3 years.
It's right. It's and I think it has to do, Bob, with the community, the internet community, which is the world, participating, unwillingly maybe in the improvement, not unwillingly, but unknowingly, not knowing that the more we use it, the better it gets. Look at ChatGPT, how it's getting better. I think to me, it's getting better every time I use it. It's feeding from our feedback.
Yeah.
And it's learning more about the accents, about the and it's this thing that the artificial intelligence part of it is learning more about the accents, to reduce the noises and uncontrolled environments. It's look at Alexa, it's, to me, it's like this thing that is always hearing you. It knows your voice.
Yeah. I did 3 years ago for the conference. Again, from the beginning, we always had captioning, and we hired a company to use real live people to do the captioning. But then Zoom added that feature.
Mhm.
So the first year, we still hired the company, but I also did, turned on the Zoom feature, and actually Zoom was more accurate than the person
Wow.
was.
Right. It was probably
Interesting.
faster. It was
Yes.
faster.
So,
Um,
we're gonna have to go,
Okay.
but
well, I say, man, and I appreciate, yes, it's having to figure out the French while listening in English and looking at the slide was a lot. There's probably something to be said about keeping slide design simple. Exactly. It's what do you want to use it for? If you really want to enable this feature for your audience, and that's one of our research questions for further research, and how do you design that slide? And if those of us who are familiar with the multimedia principles, the design of multimedia, learning with multimedia, when Mayer came out with those principles, he wasn't talking about live multimedia. He was talking about recorded, where people could pause the multimedia and read and but a live session is happening at the same time. And not only the captions, not only the content presentation, but also a little video of a person talking, and yourself, you're looking at all this extraneous, variables that can affect your cognitive process. So I think it's worthwhile looking into this, and not by wanting to do something good, you inhibit the learning experience. All right, so that's our contribution. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here, ladies and gentlemen.
well, thank you both of you for doing this. Yes, this even if it's just one person who goes out there who will use captions and somebody benefits, then it's a really positive thing.
Yes.
And hopefully in a few years, this is just going to be
Yeah,
like
yeah.
99.9% accurate and always there for everything. And we can move on to talk about something else.
We can move on and talk about learning and
Exactly.
meaningful experiences. Thank you, Bob, for having us, and everybody.
you.
Have a good
Appreciate it,
day.
guys.